Captain Hyunwoo had never seen so many ships in one place. His frigate, the ESS Indomitable, drifted at the edge of the assembly fleet's staging area near Draxus 4. 3,000 warships spread across the darkness of space. Each one carried weapons capable of destroying cities. Each one housed crews that had trained for decades. The assembly called this their final push, the operation that would break the swarm's hold on the outer territories. Hyunwoo's orders were simple. Stay back, escort supply ships. Don't get in the way. Captain, his communications officer called out. We're receiving the fleet-wide briefing. On the main screen, a Kelthon admiral appeared. Her scales were a deep green, marked with scars from previous battles. All units prepare for jump. Intelligence confirms minimal swarm presence in the target zone. We will establish a forward base and push toward their supply lines. Victory is certain. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo exchanged glances with his first officer. Minimal swarm presence. He had heard Jisu's concerns back at the assembly station. She had predicted something very different. All ships jumping in 3, 2, 1. Space twisted. The Indomitable lurched as it entered the jump corridor with the rest of the fleet. When they emerged, everything went wrong. The swarm was waiting. Not a minimal presence. Not a scattered patrol. The entire sector was filled with swarm bioships. Thousands of them. Massive living vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Their hulls pulsed with organic movements. Their weapons were part of their bodies, all ships, defensive formation. The Admiral's voice screamed across all channels. They knew we were coming. Her transmission cut off. Her flagship disappeared in a burst of light as 3 swarm vessels tore it apart. The battle became chaos instantly. Assembly ships that had trained to fight in organized formations found themselves surrounded. The Kelthon commanders tried to issue orders through their telepathic networks, but the swarm targeted the command ships first. When the commanders died, their telepathic links died with them. Entire battle groups froze, waiting for orders that would never come. The Vrotic's energy weapons, powered by their crystalline forms, had always been the assembly's most powerful advantage. But the swarm had adapted. Their ships had new shielding, something organic that absorbed the energy blasts and grew stronger from them. Captain, we're receiving distress calls, the communications officer said. Her voice shook. Dozens of them, no, hundreds. Hyunwoo gripped his command chair. The Indomitable was small, fast, built for escort duty, not frontline combat. Around him, the great warships of the assembly were being torn apart. Down on Draxus 4, Dr. Bo-Ra ran through the field hospital's corridors. She was 31 years old and had been a combat medic for 8 years. She had seen terrible things. She had patched up soldiers with missing limbs. She had held dying people's hands. Nothing had prepared her for this. The wounded poured in by the hundreds, then by the thousands. Kelthon soldiers with their telepathic links severed, unable to function properly. Vrotics whose crystal shells had cracked, their energy forms leaking out. Species she didn't recognize, their bodies torn by weapons she couldn't identify. I need more plasma, she shouted to her assistant. And find me someone who knows Kelthon biology. The assembly's medical systems were designed for their own species. Bo-Ra didn't have the right equipment. She didn't have the right training. She had to improvise with every patient. She used human medical techniques and hoped they worked. Sometimes they did. Often they didn't. Doctor, the orbital grid is failing, someone said. They're saying the swarm will be here within hours. Bo-Ra didn't stop working. Then we work faster. In orbit, technician Wanshik watched his screens with growing horror. He was 26 years old and maintained Earth's small fleet presence in the sector. His job was usually boring. Replacing parts, running diagnostics, making sure the supply ships ran smoothly. Now he watched the assembly's entire military strategy collapse. Wanshik, are you seeing this? It was Jisu's voice over the comm channel. She was still back at the assembly station, but she had access to the tactical feeds. I'm seeing it, Wanshik said. His hands moved across his controls, pulling up data streams. What am I looking for? The swarm communications. They're using a distributed network. No central command. Every ship operates independently, but shares information instantly. When the assembly kills one ship, it doesn't disrupt the others. But when the swarm kills an assembly commander, the whole formation falls apart, Wanshik finished. He understood now. The assembly had built their military around hierarchy. Orders flowed from the top down. The swarm had evolved to fight that exact strategy, It's like our tactical networks, Jisoo said. Remember the doctrine from the Mars Rebellion? Every unit can operate alone. Every soldier can make decisions. No single point of failure. One chick pulled up the swarm's communication patterns. She was right. It looked almost human in its structure. Distributed, flexible, resilient. I need to tell someone, he said. Who's going to listen? Everyone who dismissed us is either dead or running. Back on the Indomitable, Hyunwoo made a decision. Communications, get me Commander Day 1. Sir, we're supposed to retreat with the supply ships. Get me Commander Day 1. The screen flickered. Day 1's face appeared. He looked tired but alert. Captain, I'm watching the tactical feeds. It's bad. It's worse than bad, sir. I have 37 disabled assembly ships in range. They're requesting immediate evacuation. Command is ordering all support vessels to retreat. Day 1 was quiet for a moment. How many people on those ships? Estimated 40,000. Another pause. Hyunwoo could see Day 1 thinking. He was calculating. Not just the numbers, but the consequences. Begin rescue operations, Day 1 said finally. Sir, we don't have authorization. Command specifically ordered, I'm giving you authorization. Get those people out. Hyunwoo felt something settle in his chest. Relief. Purpose. Yes, sir. The Indomitable broke formation and headed toward the nearest disabled ship. Around it, other Earth vessels began doing the same. Small ships, undermanned, under-equipped, moving into a battle zone that the Assembly's finest had just lost. On Draxus 4, the alarms began to sound. The swarm had broken through the orbital defenses. They would be landing within hours. The Assembly commanders issued their orders. Retreat, evacuate command staff. Leave the wounded. Bora heard the orders and ignored them. She kept working. Around her, her medical team did the same. Human doctors and nurses moving between beds, treating species they barely understood. An Assembly officer appeared in the hospital entrance. He was Kelthon, his scales pale with fear. The evacuation order has been given. You must leave now. We're not leaving, Bora said without looking up from her patient. You don't understand. The swarm will be here. I understand perfectly. Now either help me or get out of my way. The officer stared at her. In his culture, orders were absolute. Hierarchy was everything. The idea of refusing a direct command was unthinkable. Bora finished stabilizing her patient and moved to the next bed. Behind her, she heard the officer's communicator activate. Command, this is Medical Station 7. The human staff is refusing evacuation orders. They say they're staying with the wounded. The response came quickly. Then they're on their own. We cannot risk resources for those who refuse to follow orders. The officer looked at Bora again. She kept working. After a moment, he did something unexpected. He set down his weapon and approached the nearest wounded soldier. Tell me what to do, he said. Bora glanced up, surprised. Then she smiled. Hold pressure on that wound. Don't let go no matter what happens. In the darkness of space above, Hyunwoo's ship moved between the wrecks. His crew worked frantically. They pulled survivors from disabled vessels. They dodged swarm patrols. They pushed their small ship beyond its design limits. Captain, we're at maximum capacity, his first officer reported. We can't take any more. Hyunwoo looked at the tactical display. There were still ships out there. Still people waiting for rescue. The assembly fleet had retreated. The support vessels had followed. Only Earth's small force remained. Then we make multiple trips, he said. Around Draxus 4 in the wreckage of the Great Battle, humanity kept working. They hadn't asked for permission. They hadn't waited for orders. They simply did what needed to be done. Commander Daewon sat in his command center aboard the Earth transport vessel Soul's Pride. The screens around him showed a situation that should have been impossible. 23 human ships, 4,000 soldiers. They were all that remained in the Draxus I-4 sector. The assembly had retreated 6 hours ago. The swarm forces that had destroyed 60% of the assembly fleet were now converging on the planet below. Sir, we're receiving another transmission from Assembly Command, his communications officer said. Daewon knew what they would say. He had ignored 3 previous orders to retreat. Put it through. A Kelthon admiral appeared on screen. Not the same one from before. That one was dead. This admiral was younger, his scales unmarked by battle scars. Commander Daewon, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. The Draxus system is lost. Your continued presence serves no purpose. There are 340,000 civilians and military personnel on that planet, Daewon said calmly. We're getting them out. Impossible. The swarm has complete orbital control. They have landed ground forces. You cannot evacuate that many people with your limited ships. You will only add to the casualty count. We're not leaving them. The Admiral's face showed confusion. In his culture, orders were absolute. When a superior said something was impossible, you accepted it. You are throwing away your lives for people who will die regardless. This is not logical. Maybe not, Daewon said, but it's the right thing to do. He cut the transmission before the Admiral could respond. Around him, his command staff waited. He knew what they were thinking. The odds were impossible. The swarm forces numbered in the tens of thousands. Earth's small force couldn't win this fight. Get me all ship captains, Daewon said, and get me Sergeant Jae Hwan on the ground. Within minutes, his screen showed multiple faces. Captain Hyunwoo from the Indomitable, Lieutenant Sungmi from the Fighter Squadron, Sergeant Jae Hwan from the Ground Defense Force, others from the various Earth ships in orbit. You've all heard the situation, Daewon said. We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. Command has ordered us to retreat. I'm giving each of you a choice. If you want to follow that order, I won't stop you. But I'm staying. I'm getting those people out or dying in the attempt. Nobody moved to leave. All right then, Daewon said. Let's talk about how we do this. On the surface, Sergeant Jae Hwan gathered his troops. He was 34 years old and had spent 12 years in special operations. He had trained for every kind of combat Earth could imagine. None of his training had prepared him for fighting alien, bioships and swarm creatures, but some things remained the same: strategy, tactics, using what you had to maximum effect. Listen up, he told his assembled soldiers. We're not fighting this battle the assembly way. We don't have their weapons. We don't have their numbers. So we're going to do what humans do best. We're going to be unpredictable. The assembly had always fought in organized lines, units moving together, following predetermined battle plans. The swarm had learned to counter that. They surrounded. They adapted. They overwhelmed. Jae Hwan wasn't going to fight that way. Small teams, he said. Hit and run. Never stay in one place. Use the terrain. Use their expectations against them. The swarm has evolved to fight the assembly. They haven't evolved to fight us. Around him, assembly soldiers listened. They had been left behind when their commanders retreated. Some were wounded. All were scared. A Kelthon soldier approached Jae Hwan after the briefing. Your tactics violate standard military doctrine, the soldier said. Probably. Jae Hwan agreed. Our commanders would never approve such chaotic methods. Your commanders left you here to die. The Kelthon was silent for a moment. Teach me these tactics. In orbit, Lieutenant Sungmi launched her fighter. She was 25 years old and had been flying since she was 16. She was aggressive, fearless, the kind of pilot who took risks that made her commanders nervous. Right now, those commanders were very far away. All wings, this is lead, she transmitted to her squadron. We're going to give those bioships something they haven't seen before. The swarm vessels moved in patterns. They had evolved specific flight paths, specific combat responses. They expected enemies to use energy weapons at range. They expected organized attack formations. Sungmi led her fighters in close, dangerously close. She pushed her engines hard, pulling maneuvers that created G-forces most species couldn't survive. The human body could take more punishment than the fragile forms of most assembly species. Sungmi used that advantage. Her fighters wove between the swarm ships like insects, too fast and erratic to target effectively. They used old-fashioned kinetic weapons at point-blank range, targeting weak points that energy weapons never got close enough to hit. Lead. You're pulling 8 Gs, her wingman called out. How are you even conscious? Practice, Sungmi grunted. Stay with me. 3 swarm bioships exploded. Then 5, then 10. The enemy started adapting, but by then the fighters had already changed their pattern. Down in the field hospital, Dr. Bora worked without rest. She had been awake for 36 hours. Her hands shook from exhaustion. She kept working. More wounded came in every hour. Human soldiers, assembly troops, even some swarm creatures that had been separated from their collective. Bora treated them all, she learned. Every patient taught her something new about alien biology. She kept notes. She shared them with the other human medics. We're getting better at this, her assistant said during a brief moment of calm. I can stabilize a Kelthon faster than I can patch up a human now. Bora allowed herself a tired smile. Good, because we're going to be doing this for a while. A massive explosion shook the building. The swarm was getting closer. Bora heard weapons fire in the distance. The defensive perimeter was shrinking. Technician Wanshik and Specialist Jisoo worked together from their respective ships. Wanshik was in orbit. Jisoo had arrived with the reinforcements from the assembly station. Together they did something the assembly had never considered. They hacked the abandoned defense systems. The assembly, in their retreat, had left behind automated weapons platforms, turrets, missile batteries, defensive grids. All of it shut down, waiting for authorization codes that would never come. Wanshik and Jisoo didn't have the codes. They didn't need them. Their security is built for telepathic access, Jisoo said over the comm. They never considered someone would try to access it the old-fashioned way. Lucky for us, humans are good at breaking into things we're not supposed to touch, Wanshik replied. One by one, the defensive systems came online, not under assembly control, under human control. Wanshik and Jisoo turned the planet's own defenses against the swarm forces trying to land. Jaehwan's ground teams used the confusion. While the swarm adapted to the unexpected defensive fire, human soldiers hit their flanks. While they tried to track the soldiers, the defense turrets opened fire again. It was chaotic, disorganized, exactly the kind of fighting that humans excelled at. The assembly forces who stayed behind learned quickly. A Vratic's officer asked Jaehwan to explain the tactics. Within an hour, mixed teams of humans and aliens were running coordinated hit-and-run attacks. Captain Hyun-woo continued the evacuation. His ship made trip after trip to the surface and back. Other Earth vessels did the same. They pushed their engines to the breaking point. They ignored safety protocols. They fit twice as many people in their cargo holds as regulations allowed. Every trip, more people were saved. 72 hours after the battle began, Daewon received a transmission. It was from the Kelthon admiral who had ordered the retreat. Commander, our long-range sensors showed Draxus 4 still has an active defense. How is this possible? We're still here, Daewon said simply. You should have been overrun days ago. We had a different plan than you expected. The swarm had a different plan than they expected. It's working out. On the screen, the admiral's expression changed. It was hard to read alien faces, but Daewon thought it might be respect. What do you need? The admiral asked. Time, and anyone crazy enough to come help us. The transmission ended. Daewon turned back to his command staff. All right. We've bought ourselves some breathing room. Let's use it. Below on Draxus' free surface, Bora stepped outside the hospital for the first time in days. The sky was full of fire. Ships burning. Weapons firing. In the distance, she could see the glow of the human defensive line. It shouldn't have been holding. By every logical calculation, they should have been overrun. But humans had never been very good at accepting what logic said was impossible. She went back inside. There were more patients waiting. Commander Daewon stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his 42 years of life. The chamber was massive, built to accommodate beings of all shapes and sizes. Some of the alien representatives floated in the air, others sat on platforms designed for their unique bodies. The Kelthon delegates, tall reptilian creatures with scales that shimmered like oil on water, occupied the highest seats. The Vratics, beings made of pure energy contained in crystal shells, hovered near the center of the room. Daewon had prepared for this moment for 3 months. Ever since humanity made first contact with the assembly, he had worked day and night. He studied their military structures. He analyzed their ongoing war with the Voidborn swarm. He created detailed proposals showing how Earth could help. His team had run simulations. They had prepared reports. They had translated everything into 17 different alien languages. None of it mattered. Your offer is appreciated, the lead Kelthon representative said. His voice echoed through the chamber with barely hidden amusement. But humanity is simply not equipped for this conflict. Specialist Jisoo shifted beside Daewon. She was 28 years old and one of the brightest tactical minds Earth had ever produced. For the past week, she had been trying to share her analysis of swarm movement patterns with anyone who would listen. No one had. The alien military advisors treated her like a child presenting a drawing to adults. We may not have your natural advantages, Day-One said, keeping his voice steady. But we have experience. We have adaptability. You have primitive kinetic weapons, a Vradik's counselor interrupted. Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. You have no energy shields. Your soldiers wear metal plates for protection. Your ships move slower than our cargo vessels. Your people cannot regenerate from wounds. You cannot communicate telepathically. You cannot manipulate energy with your minds. The chamber filled with sounds that Day-One had learned to recognize as alien laughter. Some species clicked, others hummed. The Kelthon made a hissing sound that reminded him of steam escaping from a pipe. Ambassador Tae-min, the 55-year-old diplomat who led Earth's delegation, stepped forward. We understand our limitations, he said carefully, but we have something to offer. Our tactical approaches are different from yours. You could serve in support roles, another counselor said. This one belonged to a species Day-One didn't recognize. Something with too many legs and eyes that glowed purple. Supply chain management. Resource distribution. Positions where your limitations will not endanger our forces. Day-One felt his jaw tighten. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion. He had seen combat. He had led soldiers through impossible situations and brought them home alive. Now he stood here being told he wasn't good enough to help fight an enemy that threatened the entire galaxy. We have reviewed your military history, the lead Kelthon continued. You fight each other. Small conflicts over resources and territory. You have never faced a threat like the Swarm. They are unlike anything in your experience. They adapt. They evolve. They consume entire worlds. Your people would not survive a single encounter. Jisoo couldn't stay quiet anymore. With respect, Counselor, I have analyzed the Swarm's attack patterns for the past 4 weeks. You have identified nothing we do not already know, the Kelthon said dismissively. We have been fighting the Swarm for over a century. Your species has known about them for less than a season. Please do not presume to teach us about an enemy we have studied for longer than your entire civilization has existed. The chamber fell silent. Day-One saw Ambassador Tae-min's shoulders slump slightly. The old man had spent 3 months trying to earn humanity a place at this table. He had negotiated. He had compromised. He had done everything asked of him. And still, Earth was being pushed aside. The Assembly thanks humanity for its enthusiasm, the lead Vradik said, its crystalline form pulsing with light. You will be assigned to support duties. You will assist with logistics. You will transport supplies. These are important roles. They are necessary roles. They are the roles best suited for your capabilities. Day-One wanted to argue. He wanted to show them all the tactical plans his team had developed. He wanted to make them understand that humanity hadn't survived this long by accepting what others said was impossible, but he also knew when a battle was lost. This was one of those times we accept, Ambassador Tae-min said quietly. We will serve in whatever capacity you deem appropriate. The council moved on to other matters. Earth's delegation was dismissed. As they walked through the corridors back to their quarters, nobody spoke. The silence felt heavy. That evening, Day-One stood at the viewport in his assigned room. Outside, he could see the Assembly's war fleet preparing for departure. Thousands of ships, each one more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. They moved with purpose, organizing into battle formations. The Assembly was preparing for what they called the final push against the Swarm. Jisoo found him there an hour later. She carried a datapad and looked exhausted. They won't listen, she said. It wasn't a question. No, Day-One replied. I tried to tell them about the pattern I found. The Swarm has been concentrating forces in the Draxis sector. All their movements for the past month point to something big happening there. But every time I try to explain, they think we're children, Day-One said. Children who don't understand the adult conversation. Jisoo set the datapad down on the table nearby. What if I'm right? What if they're walking into a trap? Then they'll learn a hard lesson, Day-One said. He turned away from the viewport. And maybe after that they'll be willing to listen. How many will die before that happens? Day-One had no answer for that. He watched the fleet outside continue its preparations. The ships moved in perfect formation, following centuries-old tactical doctrines. Everything organized. Everything predicted. Everything exactly as the enemy would expect. He had seen this before in a way. He had seen armies so confident in their superiority that they stopped seeing threats clearly. He had seen commanders so certain of their methods that they couldn't adapt when situations changed. It never ended well. Get some rest, he told Jisoo. Something tells me they're going to need us sooner than they think. She nodded and left. Daewon stayed at the viewport for another hour, watching the fleet. Watching and waiting. History had taught him many things. One of the most important lessons was this: the people who refuse to listen to warnings are often the ones who need them most. The assembly fleet departed the next morning. Daewon watched them go, a sick feeling growing in his stomach. Jisoo's analysis sat ignored in the assembly's database. Earth's tactical proposals gathered dust in some digital archive. Humanity's soldiers waited in their quarters for supply transport assignments. And out in the Draxis sector, something waited in the darkness. 6 months had passed since humanity took command of the Assembly's military operations. Strategic Commander Daewon stood in the war room of the newly constructed Earth Assembly Command Center, looking at a holographic display of the galaxy. Red zones marked swarm-controlled territory. Blue zones showed the Assembly's holdings. The map had changed dramatically in the past months. The blue zones were growing. "They're calling it the Human Revolution," Specialist Jisoo said, standing beside him. She was now Chief Tactical Analyst for the entire Assembly military. "Every species wants human advisors. Every fleet wants to train in our methods." Daewon nodded slowly. "We didn't just join their war, we changed it." On the display, a massive red zone pulsed in the center, the Swarm Prime Nexus, the heart of enemy territory, the command hub that coordinated the Swarm's forces across 40 systems. The Assembly had tried to attack it 3 times in the past century. Each attempt had failed catastrophically. "Tell me about the Nexus," Daewon said. Jisoo brought up detailed scans. "It's a living structure, size of a small moon, millions of swarm creatures connected in a hive mind. It processes battle data from every swarm ship in the galaxy and distributes tactical updates. When the Assembly attacked it before, the Nexus predicted their every move and adapted defenses faster than they could adjust. Because the Assembly uses predictable tactics." "Exactly. Their military doctrine is centuries old. The Nexus has complete records of every battle the Assembly has fought. It knows how they think, how they plan, how they react." Daewon studied the display. "But it doesn't know how we think. Not yet. But it's learning. Every battle we fight, it studies us. In another year, maybe 2, it will have adapted to human tactics as well. Then we need to hit it now." Jisoo looked at him. "You're serious? You want to attack the Nexus?" "I want to end this war," Daewon said. "And that means taking out their command center." The proposal went to the Assembly Council. The reaction was immediate and divided. "This is madness," a Kelthon counselor said. "The Nexus is impenetrable. 300,000 ships attempted to breach it 40 years ago. Less than 1,000 returned." General Haewon stood before the council. "Those ships fought using your tactics. We'll fight using ours." A Vrodix counselor pulsed with agitated light. "The Nexus learns from every encounter. It has studied the Assembly for a century. What makes you think 6 months of human tactics will make a difference?" "Because we're not going to give it time to study us," Haewon said. "We're going to hit it with everything we have all at once, using strategies it has never seen. We're going to be so unpredictable, so chaotic that it can't adapt fast enough." The debate lasted for days. Finally, the Vradix and Kelthon military commanders who had fought alongside humans at Vorath and other battles cast their votes in favor. Others followed. The operation was approved. They called it Operation Broken Hive. 200,000 ships, 50 million personnel, 400 species working together. The largest military operation in galactic history. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the flagship Unified Dawn. It was an assembly battleship retrofitted with human tactical systems. Around him, officers from a dozen species worked at their stations. They had trained together for 3 months. They trusted each other. "All fleets reporting ready," his Kelthon first officer said. "Good," Hyunwoo said. "Remember, this isn't like any battle we've fought before. The Nexus will try to predict us. We need to stay random. Change plans constantly. Don't give it time to analyze our patterns." The fleet jumped toward the Nexus. When they emerged, the swarm was waiting. Thousands of bioships defended the massive structure. But this time, the Assembly forces didn't form organized battle lines. They scattered. Hyunwoo's command philosophy had become Assembly doctrine. No plan survives contact with the enemy. So don't make plans. Make guidelines and let commanders adapt. The fleet broke into hundreds of smaller groups. Each one operated independently. Each one used different tactics. The Nexus tried to analyze the attack patterns and couldn't find any. There were too many variations. Too much chaos. All ships execute Protocol Terran Spirit, Hyunwoo ordered. Every human captain knew what that meant. Every alien captain who had trained with humans had learned it. It was the most aggressive, most dangerous tactic in the human playbook. Charge not in organized waves. Not in predicted patterns. Each ship chose its own path. Each commander made their own decisions. The fleet became a swarm of its own, unpredictable and relentless. Lieutenant Sung-mi led her fighter wing toward the Nexus's outer defenses. She had Kelthon pilots, Vradix pilots, human pilots, and 6 other species flying with her. They didn't fly in formation. They flew in barely controlled chaos. Wing, this is lead. Remember your training. Be aggressive. Be unpredictable. Make them think you're crazy. That won't be difficult, her wingman replied. The fighters punched through the swarm defenses. Song-mi pushed her engines to maximum, pulling maneuvers that created crushing G-forces. Around her, the other species pushed their limits as well. They had learned from humans that sometimes the impossible was just the difficult with determination. On a swarm-controlled moon near the Nexus, Sergeant Jae Hwan led ground forces in a mission that the Assembly had called suicide. They were infiltrating using captured swarm bioships. The plan was insane. It was exactly the kind of thing the Nexus would never predict. Remember, Jae Hwan told his mixed species team, we're not trying to destroy the Nexus from the outside. We're going to poison it from within. They landed on the moon's surface. The swarm forces there didn't attack. The captured bioships transmitted the right biological signatures. The Nexus thought they were friendly units. Jae Hwan's team moved through swarm territory, placing explosive charges at key points. Not regular explosives, something technician Wan Shik had designed with Jisu's help, logic bombs. Wan Shik had spent months studying the Nexus's information network. He discovered that it processed data constantly, looking for patterns and threats. He and Jisu created a virus that didn't destroy data. It confused it. It fed the Nexus contradictory information until it couldn't tell what was real. Charges placed, Jae Hwan reported. Detonating in 3, 2, 1. The logic bombs activated. The Nexus, already struggling to analyze the chaotic battle, suddenly received millions of false data points, enemy ships where there were none. Threats that didn't exist, patterns that contradicted reality. It tried to adapt. It tried to process. It couldn't keep up. In space, Hyunwoo saw the swarm's defenses falter. All ships, press the attack. Don't give them time to recover. Dr. Bora ran a field hospital on one of the assault ships. Wounded came in constantly. Human soldiers, Kelthon warriors, Radix defenders. She worked without stopping. Her team had become the most efficient medical unit in the fleet. Doctor, we need you on the command deck, someone called. Bora didn't want to leave her patients, but she went. On the command deck, she saw why they needed her. The Nexus was broadcasting biological warfare agents. They were designed to target specific species. The Assembly forces were suffering. Can you counter it? The ship's captain asked. Bora studied the data. She recognized some of the agents from her work at Draxus 4. She had treated victims of similar attacks. Yes, but I need 20 minutes. You have 10. She worked faster than she had ever worked before. She synthesized a broad-spectrum counteragent. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't save everyone, but it would save enough. Distributing now, she said, loading the formula into the ship's medical systems. Other ships copied her work. Within minutes, the biological attack was neutralized. Strategic Commander Dae Won watched the battle from the command center. He saw the chaos. He saw the losses. He saw humanity and the Assembly working together in ways that should have been impossible. Intelligence Officer Minji, what's the Nexus's status? Minji studied her displays. She had been monitoring the Nexus's communications throughout the battle. It's drowning in data. It's trying to process too much information at once. The logic virus is working. How long until it adapts? Unknown. Could be hours. Could be minutes. Daewon made the decision. All forces, final push. We end this now. Every ship in the fleet received the order. They converged on the Nexus. 200,000 vessels attacking a structure that had withstood centuries of assault. But this time was different. The Nexus couldn't predict their movements. It couldn't coordinate defenses effectively. It was confused, overwhelmed, drowning in false data and contradictory information. The assault lasted 3 hours. It felt like days. Ships were lost, soldiers died, but the attack continued. Finally, the Nexus's core defenses collapsed. Hyunwoo led the final strike. His ship, along with 50 others, fired everything they had directly into the structure's heart. The Nexus shattered, not exploded, shattered, like breaking glass. The hive mind connection that had coordinated swarm forces across 40 systems broke apart. Across the galaxy, swarm ships suddenly went dormant. Without the Nexus to guide them, they became individual creatures instead of a coordinated threat. On the bridge of the unified dawn, Hyunwoo's crew erupted in celebration. Around him, officers from dozens of species congratulated each other. They had done the impossible. 3 days later, Commander Daewon stood before the Assembly Council again. General Haewon stood before the Galactic Assembly Council 2 weeks after the defense of Draxus IV. She was 58 years old and had commanded Earth's military forces for the past decade. She had never expected to be standing here, addressing the leaders of 800 worlds. The chamber was different than when Daewon had stood here months ago. Half the seats were empty. Those representatives had died in the swarm's ambush. The surviving counselors looked tired, scared. The certainty they had possessed before was gone. General Haewon, the lead Vradix counselor, said, "Its crystalline shell was cracked in several places, poorly repaired. You have requested this emergency session. The Council recognizes Earth." Haewon activated her presentation. Data filled the screens around the chamber. 3 weeks ago, you told us humanity was not equipped to fight the swarm. You were right. We don't have energy weapons. We don't have telepathic communication. We don't regenerate from wounds. She paused, letting that sink in. But we held Draxus IV. With 23 ships and 4,000 soldiers, we evacuated 340,000 people from a planet you declared lost. We did this while your main fleet regrouped. We did this while following tactics you called primitive. A Kelthon counselor leaned forward. We have studied your defense. Your methods are unconventional. Our methods work, Haewon said bluntly. And I'm here to explain why. She brought up new data. Analysis that intelligence officer Minji had spent 2 weeks compiling. Minji was 29 years old and had broken more encryption systems than anyone else in Earth's military. She had been the one to crack the swarm's strategic communications. The swarm adapts through evolution, Haewon explained. They encounter a threat, and their biology changes to counter it. This happens over hours, not generations. It's their greatest strength. The counselors already knew this. They had been fighting the swarm for a century. But there's a weakness in that strength, Haewon continued. They adapt to counter specific threats. Energy weapons, telepathic attacks, organized battle formations. They've evolved to fight you. They've never fought us. She brought up combat footage from Draxus IV, Sungmi's fighters pulling impossible maneuvers, Jaehwan's ground teams using guerrilla tactics, One-Shik's improvised defense networks. We don't fight in organized lines. We don't follow predicted patterns. We don't have a single point of failure in our command structure. Every human soldier can think independently. Every squad can adapt to changing situations without waiting for orders from above. This is chaos, a counselor objected.
How do you maintain coordination?
We don't in the way you do, Haewon said. Our coordination is flexible. Our tactics are improvised. The swarm can't predict what we'll do because we often don't know ourselves until we do it. The chamber was silent. Haewon could see them processing this. Their entire military doctrine was built on organization, hierarchy, predicted outcomes. The idea of intentional chaos was alien to them. The swarm has adapted to fight a predictable enemy, Haewon said. We're not predictable. That's our advantage. She brought up Minji's intelligence analysis. Officer Minji has decoded their strategic communications. We know their next 3 target systems. We know how they plan to attack, and we know they're not expecting us to be there. The lead Kelthon counselor studied the data. You are proposing a joint operation? I'm proposing we combine our strengths, Haewon corrected. You have technology we can't match. We have tactics you haven't considered. Together we might actually win this war. Over the next week, the council debated. Some counselors argued that humanity's success at Draxus IV was luck. Others pointed out that the Assembly had lost more territory in the last 6 months than in the previous decade. Something had to change. Finally, they reached a decision. Earth would lead a joint task force, a trial operation. If it succeeded, more would follow. Captain Hyunwoo found himself promoted to fleet commander. He stood on the bridge of an assembly battlecruiser, surrounded by officers from a dozen different species. They looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. "Commander," a Kelthon officer said, "what are your orders?" Hyunwoo had spent the last week studying the Vorath system. It was the swarm's next target. The home system of the Vrotics. If it fell, billions would die. "We're not going to defend the system the way they expect," he said. "We're going to defend it the way they won't expect." He explained his plan. The alien officers listened with growing confusion. His tactics violated everything they had learned. They were messy, unpredictable. In some places, they seemed almost suicidal. "This could work," a Vrotics officer said slowly, "or we could all die." "Both are possible," Hyunwoo agreed. "But if we fight their way, we definitely lose. So we fight our way." On a training ground orbiting the Vorath system, Sergeant Jae Hwan taught assembly soldiers. He had 2 weeks to train hundreds of troops from dozens of species. They didn't share languages. They didn't share biology. Some breathed oxygen. Others breathed methane. Some had 2 legs. Others had 8. "Doesn't matter," Jae Hwan told his human assistants. "Tactics work regardless of how many legs you have." He broke the assembly soldiers into small teams. He taught them to think for themselves. He showed them how to use terrain, how to improvise, how to adapt when plans failed. The Kelthons struggled the most. Their telepathic links made them want to stay connected to their commanders. Jae Hwan forced them to train with their links turned off. "What if your commander dies?" he asked them. "In your old system, you freeze. In our system, you keep fighting." A Kelthon sergeant approached him after training. "Your methods are difficult. They require each soldier to make command decisions. That's the point," Jae Hwan said. "Every soldier is a commander in the right situation." The sergeant was quiet for a moment. "This is why you held Draxus 4. You did not wait for permission to act." "Exactly." Dr. Bora set up new medical centers throughout the Vorath system. She brought with her the techniques she had developed at Draxus 4. The assembly medical officers were skeptical at first. "You are using human procedures on alien biology," one said. "This should not work." "It works because I adapt to each patient," Bora explained. "I don't follow a single protocol. I learn what each species needs and adjust." She trained teams of medics from multiple species. She taught them to share information, to learn from each patient, to improvise when standard procedures failed. Within a week, the joint medical teams were saving lives at rates the assembly had never seen. Bora's innovations became standard practice. Lieutenant Sungmi led a fighter wing of 7 different species. She had Kelthon pilots who could predict enemy movements through their telepathy. She had Vrotics pilots who could manipulate energy fields. She had human pilots who flew like madmen. "Listen up," she told her wing. "We all have different strengths. We're going to use all of them. Kelthon, you predict where the enemy will be. Vrotics, you hit them with energy bursts. Humans will go where they don't expect and cause chaos. Together, we're better than any of us alone." They trained for 12 hours a day. At first, it was a mess. The different species had different tactics, different instincts, different communication styles. But slowly, they learned to work together. The Kelthon learned to trust the humans' aggressive flying. The humans learned to use the Vrotics' energy manipulation. Everyone learned to adapt. When the swarm finally arrived at the Vorath system, they expected what they had always encountered. Organized fleets, predictable tactics, defense forces that would break when their command structure collapsed. They got something very different. Hyunwoo's fleet didn't form defensive lines. They spread out. They used feints and misdirection. They hit hard and then disappeared before the swarm could adapt. Sungmi's fighters attacked in patterns that seemed random, but were carefully coordinated chaos. The swarm's targeting systems couldn't predict their movements. Jae Hwan's ground forces used guerrilla tactics that the swarm had never encountered. They struck from unexpected directions. They used the swarm's own adaptations against them. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the swarm had retreated. It was the first time in 50 years that they had voluntarily left a system. Back in the assembly chamber, the council reviewed the results. 0 civilian casualties, minimal military losses, the Vorath system secure. "This should not have been possible," a counselor said. "It wasn't possible the way you fight," General Haewon replied. "But we don't fight your way." The council voted. It was unanimous. Earth would assume command of assembly military operations. Human tactical doctrine would become standard training for all forces. Commander Day Wan, now promoted to strategic commander, met with Hai Wan in private after the vote. "They're scared," he said. "That's why they agreed." "I know," Hai Wan said. "But fear won't win this war. We need to teach them what we know. Make them believe in these tactics, and can we do that?" Hai Wan smiled. "We held Draxus 4 with 4,000 soldiers. We can do anything."